Hello and welcome to Challenge Your Mind, Change the World, the podcast where we dive deep into the art of communication and critical thinking, and how these essential skills can transform our relationships and our futures with our teens. I'm your host, Francesca Hudson, the classic high school teacher, a writer, entrepreneur, and an advocate for meaningful conversations. Each episode, I explore strategies and share insights on how parents can enhance their communication with their children. It's not just about talking, it's about listening, understanding, and fostering an environment where critical thinking thrives. I'm here to equip you with the tools not only for immediate improvements in your family interactions, but also to set up our teens for long-term success in every aspect of their lives. So whether you're on your morning commute or winding down for the evening, join me as we unlock the potential of our conversations to shape a brighter, more thoughtful world. Let's get started. Hi everyone, Francesca here, the classic high school teacher. Today we're talking about something that often goes unnoticed because it doesn't look dramatic and it doesn't look like crisis. In fact, on the surface, everything can look completely fine. Good grades, school attendance, no major issues, and yet, underneath, something is quietly wearing your teen down. Today, we're talking about the quiet burnout no one talks about. Burnout doesn't always look like collapse. When we hear the word burnout, we imagine refusing to go to school, or big emotional outbursts, or total shutdown. But burnout doesn't always show up like that. Research into student burnout, particularly work by Shefali and colleagues, shows that burnout is made up of three key elements: exhaustion, cynicism or detachment, and reduced sense of effectiveness. And here's the most important part. Those can exist without visible breakdown. A teen can still attend school and still complete work and still be deeply burned out. So what does it look like? How do we identify this and how do we spot it if it's so subtle? This is what it actually looks like. Quiet burnout often shows up as I don't care language or irritability over small things. Tiny things can escalate, or taking longer to start tasks, easily distracted, or maybe there's procrastination that feels out of character for your teen. Or emotional flatness. They don't have any kind of enthusiasm for anything, even their favourite things. Or maybe even a loss of interest in things that they used to enjoy. Or maybe they're constantly tired, like wanting to sleep all the time. And sometimes they are still achieving despite one or a few of these symptoms. So that's what makes it so easy to miss as burnout. So we've really got to be mindful. And one of the biggest contributors to burnout is cognitive overload. So the cognitive load theory, which was developed by John Sweller, explains that the brain has a limited capacity for processing information at any one time. That's what it means. So when that load is exceeded repeatedly, fatigue builds. So put that into context with your teenager's day. So a typical day for your teen might have multiple subjects at high school. They are constantly task switching. There is so much homework expectations. You think about all the subjects they've got at school, and every subject will have its own set of homework. Then you've got social dynamics on top of that, what's going on in class and in the schoolyard. Then we've got digital input, which is massive, both socially and emotionally. And then we've got performance pressure, both with sporting achievements and academic achievements or cultural achievements. So that is a very high cognitive load environment. And when the brain doesn't get enough recovery time from that, it doesn't just get tired, it starts to disengage. So the teens that are most at risk of quiet burnout are often the ones that you least expect. And I like to call this the high achieving trap, because these are the types of teens who are really responsible, really conscientious, very hardworking, very high achieving. They are emotionally aware. They're very mature. And research shows that perfectionism and high self-imposed standards are actually strongly linked to academic burnout because these teens don't switch off. They never switch off. They push through. They keep going, even when their internal resources are running low. So we need to be mindful of that as parents and as educators, because when you think about burnout, it can often get misinterpreted as laziness, because burnout can look like avoiding work or leaving things until the last minute or zoning out or saying, what's the point? And if you've got a high-achieving teen who suddenly starts showing some of these behaviour patterns, you might think they are suddenly slacking off or getting lazy. But neuroscience tells us that when the brain is chronically overloaded or stressed, it conserves energy. And that conservation shows up as disengagement, not laziness. It's protection. The brain is going into protection mode. And there's also an emotional component here as well. Studies on adolescent stress show that prolonged academic pressure can lead to increased anxiety, which we know is already fraught in the teenage years. Prolonged academic pressure can also lead to emotional fatigue, that tiredness, that unable to cope with having empathy for others or being able to function in friendships, reduced motivation in their sport, in their cultural, their extracurricular activities, and lower self-efficacy. So even if your teen is still functioning, they may feel like they're constantly behind, constantly under pressure, constantly trying to keep up, and that creates a quiet internal strain. So you can see how all of this is beginning to build very quietly, but very definitely under the surface. Many burnout teens are often stuck in this loop. I need to do well. If I don't, I've failed. This pattern, this voice, and this is going round and round and round in their heads. If I can't do it properly, I won't start. Now I'm behind. Now I'm overwhelmed. Now let's just park that for a minute, because perfectionism isn't high standards. It's fear of not being enough, and fear is exhausting. So how do we counteract this? How do we help? How do we support as parents? The solution isn't always removing all expectations. It's about reducing the unsustainable pressure points for teens. So here's what makes a difference. We can support teens begin to reduce cognitive load, not just time pressure, but mental pressure. So there's no point saying you don't have to study tonight, just rest. Because if they've got a big test coming up, that's just going to compound and make them more worried and more anxious. So removing time as a pressure doesn't necessarily work in this situation, but if we can remove some of that mental pressure, then that can help. So things like, let's break a task down. So if you've got a big test coming up, how do we break that test down into smaller bite-sized pieces that we can put together a study plan around? Or how do we provide structure around your notes? What type of system are you using to study? Do you use cue cards, for example, or do you do the teach to learn method where you are teaching the content to somebody else? All these different ways that you can use for studying. And we've actually got a toolkit here at the Classic High School Teacher called the Teen Academic Success Blueprint, which really supports teens with being able to break down their study into bite-sized pieces to start to remove some of that mental pressure. So I will link that in the show notes. We also want to be able to remove unnecessary decision-making, because when thinking becomes clearer, stress drops. So if your teen has got a lot of homework and they are just sitting there staring at all of their subjects and all of their books and they don't even know where to start, then maybe just make that decision for them. Just let's do English tonight, or let's do science tonight, or whatever it is. When's your first assignment due? We'll work backwards from there. The second way that we can help at home as parents is to make work predictable. So if you think about it like this, uncertainty increases stress, right? Not knowing how to complete a task or not knowing the best way to get an assignment done. When you bring structure into the equation, that's going to reduce the stress. So things like paragraph frameworks, for example, if your teen is stuck doing an essay, they don't know how to do it, they're uncertain, having something like a paragraph framework or a step-by-step system for one of their subjects, setting clear expectations, maybe having a chat to the teacher and just getting really clear on what it is that the teacher is looking for in terms of marks and grades. So we really want to just create as much structure around these tasks as possible and help the brain relax. The third way that we can help at home is to protect true downtime. So what I mean by that is research shows that recovery is essential for cognitive performance. But recovery only happens when the brain is not performing, comparing, or producing. So that means real downtime matters. That means that your teen needs to be able to rest properly rather than be distracted, feel like they've got deadlines hanging over them, being reminded of it at home by us as parents. So downtime means downtime. And the fourth way that we can support them is to soften our standards a little in times of burnout and times of stress. We want to ensure that our children and our teens are not trying to measure up to some completely high and difficult standards that we have set them. Because burned out teens often feel everything must be excellent. We want to give them permission to aim for good enough because that's going to reduce the emotional load instantly. And I know that there are times when high achievement is expected, college admissions or making a particular sports team. But I think that the amount of pressure that teens put on themselves, especially high-performing, high-achieving teens, they are already putting that pressure, that stress, those expectations on their own shoulders. So as parents and as educators, we just need to be really mindful of that and know that they are already giving themselves the pressure. So we want to give them permission to aim for good enough whenever that's possible. And this is where it gets really important because many teens tie their identity to achievement. So when they feel tired, they don't think I need a rest. They think I'm falling behind. We want to reassure them that rest is not failure and slowing down is not quitting. Their worth is not measured in output. That message matters far more than we realize as adults. Because we want to think about the long game here. School is not just about results. It's about building a sustainable relationship with work, with effort, with stress, with achievement. These are long-term factors that teenagers are preparing themselves for in the real world. Because a teen who learns to manage energy will outperform a teen who burns out repeatedly. So if your teen seems not dramatic, not collapsing, just quietly tired, pause before assuming it's attitude. It might be burnout. And burnout doesn't need more pressure. It needs space, structure, understanding, recovery. You don't need to fix everything overnight. Just noticing it is a powerful first step. If this episode resonated, share it with another parent who might be seeing the same quiet signs at home. And if you're looking for structured systems that reduce cognitive overload and make school feel manageable again, that's exactly what I focus on. I will link the Teen Academic Success Blueprint in the show notes, and it's there if you need it. Teens don't burn out because they're weak. They burn out because they've been carrying too much for too long. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you next week. Bye for now. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of Challenge Your Mind, Change the World. I hope you found our discussion enriching and that you're walking away with new ideas to enhance communication and critical thinking within your own family. If you enjoyed this episode and are finding value in our conversations, please take a moment to rate us on your favourite podcast platform. Your feedback not only supports us, but also helps other parents discover the tools they need to foster stronger relationships and critical thinking skills with their teens. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode, and share this with someone who you think could benefit from our today's topic. I'm Francesca Hudson, and I look forward to joining you again next time as we continue to challenge our minds and change the world. Until then, keep thinking critically and communicating effectively.